Hey, Larken Rose here, and before I get into the video, I wanted to mention that I will be at the Porcupine Freedom Festival this month, PorcFest for short, starting on June 19th or 20th, I forget, but going for a week. I'll have the link below. Not only are we going to have the second screening of the Jones Plantation there, I'll be giving 3 different talks on 3 different days, and then I'll be hanging out at My Rock by the corner of the parking lot, which is now officially My Rock. It's an official hub on the map. Talking to whoever shows up, and I'll have books and stuff like that. But I'll be giving talks on the 20th and the 22nd and the 23rd, and then on the 21st we're showing the Jones Plantation. So yeehaw. I checked, they're not sold out yet, so if you still want to take it, I think it's only $75, at least it was before, which is pretty freaking amazing for an event that has as many people as they do and goes for a week. It's like $10 a day almost. So yeah, if you can get there, do. Anyway, on to the topic of this video, which is rebelliousness, or fake rebelliousness. Everybody knows it's just sort of a biological reality that when kids get to a certain age, they're naturally rebellious. They're trying to be in charge of themselves and sort of resist attempts to control them by their parents or authority figures or whatever. It's just sort of a biological thing. That's actually very useful and good. It's like in almost any animal species, it's the thing going from the stage where it's just this dependent waste of space. Sorry, that's a little mean. It's just this dependent thing to turning into its own self-contained entity that can go live a life. So, but I'm not here to talk about the biological side, but about the kind of pathetic psychological side of what passes for rebelliousness. So many people, it's sad to even watch, but so many people think they're being rebellious because they looked at the mainstream media and the culture and what everybody else is doing that gets labeled rebellious, and they do that. Like, oh, the rebellious thing is to get your nose pierced and to wear and have different colored hair and to wear that thing. And, this has been around forever. This is nothing new. Like, there are fashions that are seen as being rebellious, but by definition, that isn't, because you're getting it from somebody else. Like, if nobody else was doing it, how many kids would go, I'm going to jam a hole through my nose and put a thing in it? You got that idea from watching other people. In other words, getting your nose pierced was an act of conformity. Now, it wasn't an act of conformity to the older generation. It was an act of conformity to the supposedly rebellious younger generation to say, well, I'm one of them, I'm not one of you. Okay, so, there's sort of something that I'm going against the status quo because I'm doing the thing that you associate with this other group going against the status quo. Whatever. You can do whatever. But when it comes to psychology and beliefs and philosophy, one of the most pathetic things is watching people just follow in lockstep with what the mainstream corporate media and the mainstream culture, pushed by Hollywood, what they say is rebellious. And the causes they say, if you're noble and brave and daring, you'll be on board complaining about this thing because the news told you to complain about that. And by the way, the news saying this is bad and should be complained about, it doesn't mean it should be complained about. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be complained about. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. The only rebelliousness that's worth anything at all is when you yourself internally think things and figure things out and have a conscience and say, I'm not going to do what the people around me are doing because right now I think the right thing to do is this thing over here. I'm going to resist and I'm going to point out that this is bad even when other people is doing it. That's actual rebelliousness. And that's not what the vast majority of people do, and it's not what the vast majority of young people do when they think they're being rebellious, and they're not. And often they're just being obnoxious brats, and they think that counts as rebelliousness. It's okay, well, depending on your definition of the term, but there's nothing noble or useful or progressive, well, now that term's been destroyed, about doing that. And if it comes from inside and you're going against the grain, that's the only, example of rebelliousness that's worth anything. So, for example, the abolitionists were rebellious. There was like a country full of people, and most people even said, yeah, slavery is perfectly legitimate, or said nothing about it and just sort of didn't say anything and were just going with the flow. The rebellious ones were the ones who were going, this is horribly evil. We know lots of people approve of it and think it's okay, and you've legalized it. It's still horribly evil. We're going to fight against it. And that takes actual courage, because that isn't, I'm going to stand up for what everybody I know is standing up for. I'm going to go wear the ribbon that shows I care about the thing that the media is telling everybody to care about, and wear a ribbon on and have a flag on your your thumbnail of whatever stupid social account you have. There's no courage in that. Now, it doesn't mean that's a bad thing. Like, if you support something that's good and everybody else is, okay, well, good. But that's not courageous. That's not rebellious. That's, well, you followed the crowd, and the crowd in that situation happened to be doing the right thing. Okay, well, I'm glad you followed the crowd. But the thing of Black Lives Matter. Is there anybody out there saying Black lives don't matter? I mean, there might be a few just total racist jerks somewhere, but it's not exactly a big Black Lives Don't Matter movement going on. Anybody with a brain knows that Black Lives Matter. Like, that. What's bold about that? What's rebellious about saying that? And here's the trouble, is if you take something good and righteous, like the concept that Black Lives Matter, I mean, it's stupidly obvious, but okay, and then you make it into a political thing that says, here's this thing that there's nothing rebellious at all about it, but it's like, well, yeah, we're against these people being horribly victimized. Okay, is there anybody who isn't? Well, cops. Other than cops, is there anybody who's okay with innocent people being victimized if they're black? Are there like 3 of those people in the whole world that are okay with that? But once you create a movement and say, okay, this is the Black Lives Matter movement, and therefore, if you don't support whatever this movement does, you must not care about black people. Like, that's obnoxious, and it works really well, because most of the people who jumped on board to virtue signal and feel good about themselves for completely non-rebelliously supporting something that everybody with a brain already supports, it's really easy to manipulate those people, because they're the exact opposite of rebellious people. They are following a popular pattern that they know will get them praise. If you're getting universal praise for your courage, it's not courage. It's courage if most of the people, or at least a bunch of the people, are saying, you're horrible and we hate you. That's courage. Doesn't mean you're right. They may hate you because you're advocating something stupid, but they may hate you because you're advocating something good that they don't like yet. And that takes actual courage. There's no courage involved in, like, I put a Ukraine flag on my, okay, whoop-de-frickin-do. Like, how was that brave? You did. And by the way, the vast majority of people who do that, first of all, can't find Ukraine on a map. Second of all, the only reason they do that is because everybody else did. They don't have no idea what's going on over there. The vast majority of Americans have no idea what's going on there. They were just told that good people care about this. And they're like, well, I'm good people, so I'm going to protest. What are you protesting? Well, Russia or something. Like, you don't even know what you're protesting. And there's no courage involved. But you see a lot of movements like that. And especially, like, the biggest bunch of fake rebels in the world is Hollywood and show business. I will proudly wear this pin, which means I'm for awareness of some cause. Is it some cause that everybody is like arguing about, or is it some cause that literally everybody says, well, yeah, like breast cancer awareness. Yeah, nobody's pro breast cancer. And yeah, we'd like it to not be there. what bravery and courage did it take to do that? Now, if you're like giving money to a research thing, I don't nearly trust mainstream medicine anyway, but that's a different issue. Okay, good for you. But to like wear it as this, I'm proud, I'm fighting against something. No, you're not. Nobody's fighting for that. And all the examples of Hollywood, we're going to stand up, and you can see it in the terminology. We're going to stand up for trans rights. Okay, what does that actually mean? Do you mean you're going to stand up to like try to prevent trans people from being violently attacked? Because I'm all in favor of that. Like, I'll loan them a gun if somebody's actually attacking them. But if you mean, here's this thing that now all the good people are virtue signaling by saying we're in favor of those rights, like, which rights? Do you even dare to talk about what the hell you're talking about? Or are you jumping on a bandwagon to pretend you're different and courageous after everyone else is already on the bandwagon? What actually takes courage is to stand up, for example, for freedom of speech for people that I think are stupid and I disagree with. And that lots of people will get mad at me for saying even those people should be allowed to say what they think, even when what they think is stupid and obnoxious and rude and racist and whatever else. They have the right to say what they think. They don't have the right to say what they think in your living room or on your Facebook page. Like, you can block them there. You can decide what's in, your little zone. That's fine, because that's freedom of disassociation is part of freedom of association. But the whole, let's shut down anybody with this opinion, the actually courageous principled position to take is, no, I'm going to defend that obnoxious jerk and his right to say obnoxious jerk stuff. I'm not going to say his opinions aren't obnoxious. I will happily criticize him and point out why he's stupid and wrong about everything under the sun. But in principle, I will, it's the saying, like, I forget the exact quote. Basically, I hate your opinion, but I'll defend to the death your right to express it. And that takes actual courage when you know that a bunch of people are going to be mad at you for doing the right thing. And most, like, rebellious teens do absolutely none of that. And most rebellious grown-ups, like people in Hollywood, there's almost nobody in Hollywood with a shred of a spine. Because the moment there's anything that can even be misconstrued as something that might trigger some marginalized group, they're out there groveling and apologizing, even if they didn't do anything wrong or say anything untrue, because they're total freaking cowards. They're the exact opposite of actual rebels. Now again, being a rebel doesn't make you good, it doesn't make you bad, it just means you're going against the flow, which sometimes the flow is good, sometimes the flow is bad. And that brings up the other thing, which is that the people who are rebellious by just doing whatever authority told them not to, that also isn't actual rebelliousness. Like the kids, we're going to smoke in the boys' room because they told us we can't. Oh, you're so rebellious. Such courage to give yourself lung cancer because they told you not to do that. That's just a stupid reactive thing. That isn't your own understanding and thought and conscience overcoming peer pressure to do the right thing. That's just you stupidly reacting to a command by doing the exact opposite. Oh yeah, my parents told me don't jump off a cliff just because my friends are doing it. Well, I'll show them. It's like, okay, you're an idiot, and you're not even actually being rebellious. You're just doing the opposite of what they told you instead of doing what they tell you. If there's any good kind of rebelliousness, that requires you using your own brain and your own conscience to say, even when everybody's against me, I'm going to say what I think is true and I'm going to do what I think is right. And hardly any young people dare to do that. And that's not just now, that's forever. Like, there's always new trends and fads of rebelliousness, and most of them just follow along, and they're just following a fad and trends that other people made up. And that's just a way for whether you're talking about just, some company that just wants to make money off of, we're going to sell these cool, supposedly rebellious things. We're going to sell, like, satanic t-shirts because we want to make a bunch of money, and the idiot kids think they're being rebellious. So part of it's just that, but sometimes there's actually a political motive where any just cause, any like rational movement or anything, of course the people in power are going to hijack it. And one of the saddest examples to me is the Black Lives Matter movement. Not the concept, because duh, obviously, but the movement and then the organization. It started largely as a result of the fact that thugs of the state were doing really nasty things to black people, including murdering them. Now, you can argue about, well, yeah, but that they do that to everybody. They do that to white people too, and it's blown out of proportion how much that happens to black people as opposed to other people. And you can argue about the statistics. I don't really care. The point was, whether their perceptions were right or not, mostly that movement started as a backlash against government injustice. And the political parasites used righteous indignation about abuse of thugs of the state as an excuse to have more government power. So the abuser, when the people said, we don't like being abused like this, said, okay, vote for us and empower us, and we have these new programs that'll help you out and do all these things. Just give us more power. It's like, you're literally giving power to the people who were abusing you that you were complaining about. And government will always try to do that. They will try to take any victim group, whether it was like real victims or it's exaggerated or it's made up or whatever, and use that as an excuse to get power for themselves. And they don't give a crap about like the people who were actually victimized, like the black people who actually get mistreated for being black by the cops or whatever, the people who actually get like violently harassed or whatever else for being gay or trans or whatever, the people who were actual victims of immoral aggression. People in power don't give a crap about you. Like, why do you think it follows the patterns? Oh, this year we're all concerned about trans people. Well, did people in power give a crap about them for the last 20, 50, 100 years? No. Because at the time, they didn't see an opportunity to get power for themselves. It's not because they give a crap about you. And same thing if you follow the U.S. government's treatment of black people, starting from when there was slavery. And yeah, for those who pointed out, I know not all slaves were black, and not all slave owners were white. Statistically, most of the slaves were black. So you can view that as, yes, government was enforcing laws that said slavery was okay. That's about as bad as you can get. Like, it's debatable whether that's better or worse than just murdering people, but pretending you own somebody, that's as bad as you can get. So for a while, the U.S. government was enforcing that. And then they went to, okay, well, you're not slaves anymore, but now we're going to do forced segregation, where if you, the people, want to mingle, and some of you do and some of you don't, we're not going to leave it up to you. We're going to come in and use the violence of the state to make you integrate. And then they'll cause more trouble. And then we're going to come in later and make you segregate, or sorry, I said it in the wrong order. Make you segregate, whether you wanted to or not. And then we're going to come in and make you integrate by force and send in thugs to do that. So every single step of the way, I mean, that's one of the most glaring examples of, a group that back in history has some pretty like serious gripes about how they were mistreated in the most horrible ways imaginable. And government comes along and says, yeah, that was unjust. Give us power and we'll fix it. And the people who think they're being rebellious, who play into that, and I'll do a comparison here. I'll offend some people. I don't give a crap. I, to a large degree, agree with what Malcolm X said about Martin Luther King Jr. He was basically a sellout. He was telling his people, basically passively let them beat the crap out of you. And Malcolm X was saying, don't. Like, we have the right to defend ourselves, including with deadly force if necessary. And there's nothing rebellious about saying, well, we don't like being treated this way, but we're going to let you treat us this way and let you beat the crap out of us. And you can talk about tactics and the morality of pacifism or whatever you want. But Malcolm X was actually being a rebel. He was saying, this is wrong. Even if a bunch of, you, my fellow black people, are falling for the Martin Luther King thing of, well, let's be above that by letting them victimize us. Like, why? That's not, you're just legitimizing it. You're pretending it's okay by going along with it. And so, of course, Malcolm X dies. What a shock. Even Martin Luther King gets killed. What a shock. Because they're both, like, to one degree or another, they weren't going along with the program. But when the rebelliousness has resistance to it from the mainstream, that's the only time it takes any courage. And if to jump on board, like all the people now condemning the evils of slavery, it's like, oh, how courageous of you. Like, I condemn that too. I don't pretend it's courageous. Everybody knows that was really stinking evil. So I'm not like, oh, I'm so virtuous because I say slavery was bad. Who are the people who are saying it wasn't? There's no virtue in that. It's still true. It should still be said. I mean, don't really think it needs to be said because everybody knows that now. But the people who jump on board and pretend they're virtuous, the thing is, and you may not want to hear this, a huge proportion of those leftists who are demanding reparations for slavery are absolute cowards. They have no courage. They have no spine to actually go against the mainstream to do the right thing. They can do the right thing when everybody around them is doing it and it's all comfortable and they get praised for their courage for standing up for something that literally everybody in the world now stands up for. Like, you're not standing against anybody. Where's the pro-slavery people that you're fighting against? There aren't any. And those people who think that they're all virtuous and rebellious now for talking about how bad slavery was and how we need reparations, most of them would have been bashing the abolitionists because they didn't have the spine to stand up against injustice when they would be alone doing so. So they'd be the one condemning the abolitionists and saying, oh, well, there'd be chaos without slavery, and who are you radicals to break the law and help slaves escape? But these absolute cowards want to imagine themselves to be rebellious when they're only rebellious against injustices that everybody can see. Yeah, that's horribly bad. The fact that anybody ever believed that is horribly bad and sad and everything else. But they don't stand up for anything true and righteous if they have to stand alone because they're cowards. There's nothing rebellious about them. There's no courage there. And the whole thing of people come out as, oh, it's so brave of that person to come out as gay. Somebody doing that 50, 60 years ago when they might have literally been beaten to death. 50, 60 years ago. It was pretty freaking dangerous in some places to admit that you're gay. That's brave. Now, whether it's tactically smart or not, that's a different thing. But to dare to come out and say, yes, this is true, even if you violently attack me, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. Okay, that's that takes some bravery. But coming out and saying you're gay now, where's the bravery? Is somebody violently attacking you for being gay? Or are you just sort of milking the victim status of what used to happen to other people before? And so now you want to pretend that you're being brave by doing what everybody goes, okay, that's fine. Nobody's attacking you for that. And so I think the saddest thing is watching the young people just growing up now who jump on board these things and they're actually sold as if here's how you can be rebellious against the status quo. And they don't take 2 seconds to go, wait a minute, the status quo, the mainstream corporate media, they're the ones telling us this is how we're supposed to be rebellious. Shouldn't you be a little suspicious of that? When the powers that be are telling you, here's how to, when the machine is telling you, here's how to rage against the machine by complaining about the climate and wanting more taxes for it. It's the abuser, when he tells you how to resist the abuser to be virtuous, it's a safe bet that what he's telling you is A, no risk to him, and B, not rebellious at all. You're just following a pattern that they're pretending is rebellious. And it's weird to watch because there are some actually brave young people who dare to stand up and go against the crowd and go, I'm not really sure that, we're all saying this, like somebody who dares to say, obviously, Black Lives Matter, duh, but this organization is pushing for stuff that's not really okay, and we shouldn't be okay with it just because they use that title. Violent theft and just destroying people's property for no reason. Are we supposed to think that's okay because the people doing it wear 3 words as their label that describe something that's true? No, I think maybe we shouldn't. And there are some people who are actually rebellious enough to point out the stupidity of the popular rebellious movements that are completely designed and orchestrated by the powers that be. And so the ultimate test is, and you don't always have to be rebelling against something. Like, okay, now everybody around you knows that slavery is bad. You don't have to rebel against that by saying slavery is good. Like I said, it's not just inherently good or bad to be rebellious and go against the flow. But when the flow is going in the wrong direction, when the people around you believe something stupid or malicious or advocate something stupid or malicious, actual rebelliousness, actual courage has to come from inside you. Not somebody else told you how to be rebellious, but with your own brain and your own conscience, you deciding, yeah, I know most of you don't know this, or you don't think this, or you don't believe it, but I have to say this. I believe this is true, and I have to do what I think is right, even if I'm condemned by the people around me. Nobody in Hollywood dares to do that. And if they do, they immediately get canceled by everybody else in Hollywood, even on little trivial things. And most young people do not nearly have the strength and the courage to actually stand up in the face of peer pressure of all their rebellious friends who are all doing the exact same rebellious things and say, that may not be a good idea, and it may turn out that I have to stand against you to actually be courageous and rebellious. So just obeying for the sake of obeying is bogus and stupid. That's giving away your self-ownership. Just disobeying for the sake of disobeying is also stupid, and it's giving away your self-ownership. There's no courage, there's no rebelliousness, in the good sense, in any of that. The only time you deserve any praise for being courageous is if your heart and your brain say what's going on right now is not okay, even though all these people seem okay with it. I have to speak out against it or act out, or whatever you decide you have to do. If you're not going against the flow, there's nothing courageous about it. Now, like I said, you don't just go against the flow to go against the flow. But all these people who think they're being rebellious, all these influencers and all these talking heads and everybody in Hollywood, it's just pathetic. They're the biggest sheep in the world. They're the most spineless followers in the world. And yet they're saying, this is what being rebellious and courageous looks like. No, you'll know you're being courageous when most of the world hates you. And if it doesn't, you're not making a difference.